The challenge coins are back in stock. Sometimes we all need a little reminder around to let us know that we're not alone and there are people out there who understand our suffering. Keep it for yourself or give it to somebody in need. 100% of our proceeds go to Dented Development Project so they can continue their mission of taking care of first responders and their families. Go to thesufferingpodcast.com or denteddevelopmentproject.com to find details on how to order. We're in this together. Don't ever forget that. Welcome to the Suffering Podcast. Each week we walk you through how suffering is the way to sustainable success and the path to greatness. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and many more. Visit thesufferingpodcast.com for complete details. Please subscribe and like to get our latest episodes as soon as they drop. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for exclusive content. Please comment. We may read your comments on future shows or even reach out to you for a future guest appearance. Let's embrace how suffering forges bonds that last forever, showing we are never alone. So get ready, sit down, and strap in.
Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pay. Sit your ass down. Sit your ass down and strap in. This is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. Let's talk about the suffering. It's time to start the pain. This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Dented Development Project is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to assist first responders and their families repair dents caused by suffering. Help us support the ones who take care of us selflessly. Dented things can still operate, but may not be as pretty as they once were. Make a difference and go to denteddevelopmentproject.com to get involved today. Our heroes need our help. All new Suffering Podcast gear is here. The show depends heavily on our supporters to get the word out. Let people know that suffering is a team sport and no one is alone in their struggles. Wearing the Suffering Podcast merchandise accomplishes that goal. Check out our store at thesufferingpodcast.com or check our show notes for the link. Your support and love means everything to us. What does it mean to be a tough guy? Does a tough guy hold in his emotions? Does a tough guy go out and break legs? Is a tough guy someone able to take the pain? Or does a tough guy endure suffering? From a young age, most men are taught to be good little soldiers, to do as we're told without question and endure that suffering. We're conditioned to show no weakness. If you're hurt, pick yourself up and rub some dirt on it. Developing mental toughness is much different than developing physical toughness. It doesn't take much talent to go out and break legs. The real talent lies in healing and helping. A tough guy is able to own up to his own weaknesses. A tough guy is able to see his shortcomings. A tough guy is able to see his errors. A tough guy is able to take what he's learned and apply it to life so that others don't fall into the same pitfalls and mistakes that they have made. I'm Kevin Donaldson here with Mike Falaise, and on this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we sit down with Frankie Steele Pontillo to discuss the suffering of a mafia enforcer. Frankie has taken a step back from the life he was born into to be able to see that true toughness is applying the lessons he's learned to create a new life. Frankie, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Frank, you know what a struggle it is for me, right? To see Kevin fumbling through those things. Now you know what I go through every week. You really want to talk stuff.
I see that a lot.
Everything you just said, it is edited out.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's the beauty of being the boss, Frankie. Yep. So I made contact. We get into a social media question every week. We take a question from an audience member and we give it to the guests, and it's sort of off the cuff. There was a gentleman who reached out to me. His name's Klaus. He's from Austin, Texas. At the time he contacted me, he was 13 days sober. He's a vet from Afghanistan. And he's just a fan of the show. He's a fan of what suffering can do for you. So I invited him to give us our social media question. And what he wrote was, I told him about you, and I told him we'll be recording you very soon. He said, what is the cause of the mafia's decrease in power over the past couple decades? Because we were talking about, when one boss gets dethroned, another boss comes in, there's a power vacuum. But from somebody who used to be in the life, I'd be interested to find out what your perspective is on in recent years, the decrease in power of the mafia.
Okay, that's a good question. Klaus. From Texas.
From Texas. Go figure.
In my opinion, I see things different than a normal person when it comes to this kind of stuff. Being around it, growing up around it. It all comes down to the quality of guy. And the quality of guy changed from, say, like the 70s and 80s and the early 90s. There was a certain type of guy where everybody lived by a certain code. As like the 90s, the end of the 90s into the 2000s, it started changing. Things that were a no-no, people just looking the other way with certain people. And I think the influence the mob used to have was just desensitizing through that 1990 to 2000 mark. Then from the 2000 mark to the 2020 mark, that's when it really went south. It all comes down to the quality of guy. Like there was certain rules that you never broke, and there was consequences. Things that I would never think of doing. Like, see what we're doing now, like a podcast?
Yeah.
If this was in the early 80s, I'd be shot in the head.
Which is amazing to think about. But somebody else put it to me this way, is because of the nepotism in the mafia. And then nepotism goes across the board, corporate mafia, everything. You have somebody like, say, Michael Frances, who you were aware of, he's being a Columbo.
Yeah.
His father was Sonny Frances. He was the guy.
Yeah, I knew his father. I never met Michael.
And Michael matriculated. Now, Michael had his own talents, but Michael matriculated really quickly. Again, to bring home the concept of our show is you have to go through suffering in order to appreciate anything. Junior Gotti's the same thing. Was given his position without really having to work for it all that much or all that hard. Say somebody like yourself or his father or Sonny Frances as an example, without having to work through all of those things, you never appreciate the position once you have it. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with it. And as far as like John Gotti and John Gotti Jr., there's a story that it went through the circles. It might have been in some books, might even been on some documentaries, but through our world. I remember in prison, an old timer was telling me a story. They were at a wedding. Somehow there was a meeting somewhere that got back to one of the guys in front of the chin.
Vincent Gigante.
Yeah.
Gigante.
Meaning what I mean in front of was the puppet. Because the chin was not crazy.
That came out later.
Would robe all the time.
Odd father, right? Yeah.
And basically, John told that gentleman, my son just got straightened out. He's one of us. And basically the message back was, I'm sorry to hear that.
Really? And this came by way of puppet from Chin?
Yeah.
So from everything I heard about Chin was a serious guy. As a matter of fact, when Paul Castellano was taken out, the story that again, I wasn't in that life, but the story that I heard was Frankie DeChico got killed as retaliation because they didn't get clearance from the commission.
Correct.
Yeah. That's
now you see that killing?
Yeah.
I was driving down 86th Street.
The DeChico killing or the Castellano?
DeChico. I was driving down 86th Street because everybody was saying, you got to go see the car. It looks like something out of Beirut. I was driving down 86th Street and I saw the car smoking still.
No kidding.
Where they blew him up. And now years later, I was in prison with a gentleman named Herbie Pate. And he was like, a mob guy. But he was like some special forces guy that knew how to make, artillery and detonators and all kinds of stuff. And he was like, he kind of claimed that.
Really?
Yeah,
no kidding. Did he ever get popped for it?
They came up somewhere. I don't know if he got popped for it, but he was like, I haven't heard if he died or not. I don't even know if he's alive. He was close with my father.
Your father, for those people that don't know who he was, what was your father's name? Frankie Steele Pontillo is one of the coolest nicknames of your father. Your father had a cool one too.
Yeah, his name was Sammy Cigarettes.
Sammy Cigarettes. So he stole he sold bottles of liquor?
No. No, tractor. When I was a kid, I used to go to warehouses all over Newark that they had. A cousin of mine married somebody from North Carolina. while they was in the military. They had like a kid. My father was still friendly with him, and he had the connection in North Carolina for the cigarettes.
To get the different stamp.
Yeah,
on
the
there.
stamps.
And basically, he went to go down there and tractor trailer after tractor trailer would just keep going down, back and forth, filling up the warehouse in Jersey, in Newark. It was big in the 70s. Everybody knew him. Everybody knew him just for that alone, for that whole run that they had.
I think he'd probably starve today because everybody's quitting smoking.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, you also had a heroin route too.
Okay. You got to have
You got to branch off once in a
have
while.
your supplement. Right?
He was importing heroin to the country.
But he did some serious time.
Yes. The last bid that he got was really not even about heroin. What happened was, when he used to get stuff brought into the country, they used to send leather jackets from Istanbul, Turkey, with the packages. So when we would meet the runners, they were like, "Here's a gift, a leather jacket." It was like soft. It was like a camel ass. It was like he never felt leather like this, right? So I was like, "Dad, we should get some of these for Christmas gifts. Let's get about 20, 30 of them in different sizes and give them out, because I never felt the jacket this soft." So from the kitchen, from the phone, he called up the cafe in Istanbul, Turkey, talked to his friend, and ordered like 25 or 30 jackets, assorted sizes. Well, the cafe was being bugged by Interpol.
Oh,
ouch.
Now, Interpol gave the tape to the DEA. Now the DEA says, "Oh, this is not jackets. This is guys just ordering heroin."
and he was really ordering jackets.
Yeah.
Jackets, code word for heroin. Yeah, give me 2 jackets.
Yeah, so now he gets the phone count, which with his record should have been about 10 years with his record, because he had a bad record. And the judge, Sterling Johnson, upwardly departed him 17 more years.
Oh my God!
On top of that phone count, and he got 27 years for ordering
jackets,
leather jackets. Well, because of his past,
right,
with all the different important heroin here and there, and the pizza case, and this and that,
with everything else going on that he was important, he got 17 years for jackets.
No, 27.
Or 27 years for jackets.
So your father was part of the pizza connection also?
He supplied a lot of people in Harlem and them. He was close. He had a big route with the actual importers of heroin from Istanbul, Turkey.
Wow.
That later on turned out to probably be ISIS.
Well, I know a lot about you, Frankie, but I've done my research. I want you to tell our audience a little bit about you.
Okay.
I know that's usually the toughest question when you ask somebody, "Hey, tell me about yourself."
Tell me about yourself.
I'm nothing special. I'm just a regular person that, grew up in Brooklyn. I don't want to say fell victim to it, but I got blinded by the mob life.
You had to be from Bay Ridge or Bensonhurst.
Yeah, Bensonhurst. I was in Canarsie for a little bit when my mother got sick, and I was in Canarsie for a little bit, but then I went back to Bensonhurst.
All right. Do you remember Lemoore?
Lemore's, yeah, that was a rock club.
My father owned it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but so when John Elite was in here, John and Mike's father knew each other from the old days, and we were able to hook him up with a phone call. Especially John's father and Mike's father were pretty
Lemore's.
tight.
Yeah. That was the rock club, like in the 60th,
62nd.
Yeah,
between 15th and 16th.
Yeah, right near Maple Lanes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We were just talking about Maple Lanes the other day.
It's a condominiums now or something. Yeah, the Jewish people built everything.
Well, the Russians took it over at one point too.
Oh, yeah?
Because I believe when my father's club was sold, the Russians took it over, and they turned it into some place called Red Wolf or something like that. And
I can see how you get blinded by that life. Now, I grew up around all these guys in the Philly mob. You knew as a very young kid, you didn't know really what they were doing. It was very quiet back then. You didn't really know what they're doing. But when Nicky Scarfo showed up, he was a man that you're like, you didn't know why, but you knew he was somebody that commanded respect. So the fact that
they exude respect at that point. You have that certain, what do they call it? That je ne sais quoi.
It's a charisma that walks
exactly.
in the room. You know who's who.
When someone walks in, you knew. And like I said, being at my father's club, when someone walked in, you knew there was somebody because they exuded that.
Right, they have a certain way of walking. I'm assuming around the neighborhood when you were young, that's what you saw.
Yeah, so you see on every corner there was a different social club for a different family. Yeah. That was the hub. Bensonhurst was the hub, and Bensonhurst had every club was there, from every family. But the Ravenite, that was in Queens. That was John's. That was
right. That's what
2001 Odyssey.
No. The Ravenite was in Manhattan. The Bergen Hunting Fish Club was on 101st Avenue.
That's what I was
The
thinking.
Raven Eye was on Mulberry Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it got me confused there for a second.
I was on Mulberry Street last night.
Yeah, it changed since back then.
Yeah.
Well, now it's only a block, right? It's
Yeah.
just one block. But
Chinatown's moving a little bit north.
no, it's all tourist trap now anyway.
Yeah, I still go to Chinatown a lot because my daughter loves octopus, and there's one fish wholesaler that I've been using forever, and I go there.
All the way to Chinatown for some octopus.
Well, I buy like 4 giant ones.
No kidding.
You don't buy leather jackets, do you?
No.
You come along, you see all these guys of respect, and they just groom you? Is that how they do it?
Well, you know what it is? You see them when you're young, walking to school, you're passing the club on the way home, and you're mingling. And if they like a lot of guys knew I was Sammy's son, so they would talk to me, bring me in. You want something to eat or whatever, and through the years, you want to hang around them, and you're looking for that. You're looking for love in all the wrong places.
Well, you're drawn to that lifestyle.
Yeah, because
You know,
see,
they got the fancy clothes, the fancy cars.
yeah, you see the cars, you see the money, you see the power, the respect is there, and you think this is something that you really want because you think it's a certain way, and you do whatever you have to do to get accepted.
It's sort of like the scene in the Bronx Tale where the kids are buying guns in the back alley because they think that's going to impress the boss.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things about a Bronx Tale, as it correlates with your life, when the boss Sonny finds that these kids are buying guns, he smacks them in the head. Like, what are you, stupid? Your father being involved in that stuff.
My father wanted nothing for me to have nothing to do with this life. Every visit that I seen him, he's like, why are you doing this? You're gonna end up here. But it just like I was like, yeah, don't worry, I'll be all right. And one ear and out the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went to a lot of prisons visiting him through my life, from young all the way up until before I went to prison. He tried to steer me away, but once he saw that it was it's inevitable, so to speak, then he kind of accepted it.
It's almost got to get in your blood, though, doesn't it? I mean, it becomes part of who you are.
Well, yeah. When you live a certain way and you want to be accepted, you do things. And like even young, like I was good at robbing cars, and the mob, when they have to do something serious, they need a car. And I got a lot of cars for them.
You were good at hot wiring or just breaking in?
Just tilting it. Anything with a tilt steering, just with a screwdriver, I'd start that thing in under 10 seconds down the block.
You used to watch.
At one point, they were stealing, and I'm not going to blame you, but they were stealing on the average of 47 cars a night from around the area of my father's club.
But Lamor's. But you know what?
So it was probably you.
I watched these car thieves on the other side of the law. I watched them, and these kids usually from the inner cities were so talented in getting in those cars that if these kids just were to put their energy into something good, they would have been successful in it because they were like a savant. I watched somebody made this homemade gadget out of a battery-powered Sawzall that could literally turn a car on. We're talking early 2000. Literally turn a car on in about 5 seconds. I mean, it was amazing. And you watch them on video camera because all the places they stole from had the cameras at the time. And you're like, holy cow, man, these kids are good. They could have been auto mechanics, just like you.
Yeah. You know what? I used to, as a kid, I used to wash trucks at the place called Mika Towing in Canarsie, right near Patty Testa's car lot. And, you see a lot of crashed cars. And there was a guy that worked the yard, and he says, yeah, you just take the screwdriver here, you just popped it here, you start. And I would practice. Later on, I became good at it. And plus, I had a far walk to school. So that changed.
Now it became a quick drive.
Yeah. So now it got to the point where I was leaving the cars by the school. And one day I had a class with the car that I took that morning. The cops were putting the dust for fingerprints all over it. So they knew something was going on, but then I stopped a little bit. I've taken it to school. And you do these things, and now they know Frankie could do cars. What else can Frankie get? What else can he do? And then before you know it, you're doing this run, you're doing that run, you're going over here, to pick up some money from somebody, or somebody owes back vig, and you're going to pick up the money. And before you know it, you're in the loop.
You're gaining respect at that point.
Yeah,
the more you know, the more you can do, the more you could help them.
Well, you know what it is? They're grooming you, and they want to see what you can do, what you can handle, and how responsible you are. If you have any bad habits, or if you're just straight arrow. And believe me, I never did any drugs. I really wasn't a drinker. I never smoked. They were against that. If you're a drug addict, you're not going to last too long.
And we're talking like what time?
Oh, yeah,
What
young. Like 14 years old, I was robbing the cars for them.
What's the age, or what's the dates? late 70s?
No. The late 70s. That's when I was doing hubcaps. Yeah, the late 70s, I was doing hubcaps.
See, that hubcap business ran out real quick, though. No cars have hubcaps anymore.
But I heard that's how breakdancing was invented. They tried to steal one off a moving car.
Yeah, no, yeah. I used to bring a lot to Patty Testa's car lot, in Canarsie, and until my grandma found my stash. My grandma, she was an old Italian lady. She would plant tomatoes in everybody's yard. If she heard you had a plot of land 1 foot by 1 foot, 10 miles away, she'd walk there and plant. And
or you drive her in one of your stolen cars.
Yeah, no, I had to hide them. My friend's mom, found us, saw us driving one day, and she went and burned the car because she thought we bought it. It was someone else's car, but
oh my,
yeah, the car was singed. But so my grandma,
no fingerprints off of that.
Yeah, so my grandma is planting, and there's a spot in my backyard that was nothing but dirt and this. So I built a little cabinet in the ground with wood, and I dug it out, and then I put a liquid glue on top, and then threw rocks and dirt on it, so that when it looks down, it looks like the ground. Mm-hmm. But you just go there and flip up the wood. That's where everything was. And she found it.
Oh no!
She found it trying to plant tomatoes in that area of the yard. She says, your father, what I went through with your father, and now you're gonna get in trouble. I'm like, I'm not gonna get in trouble, Grandma. Yeah, she was like a psychic. She knew the path. But it went from the stealing the hubcaps, making money, and doing little odd things, and before you know it, you're in the loop if you're around the right circle.
I know the life seems very glamorous to most people on the outside. Usually it's the people who come from the inside that tell you that the grim finish below the glossy veneer of that type of life. We ask everybody when they come in here, everybody's got a suffering story. Everybody's got a really bad suffering story. If you had to pick one out from your past, what do you think it would be? The one that hurt you the most.
And if you didn't have a suffering story, you wouldn't be in here.
This is true.
Well, unfortunately, I have a lot of suffering story, a lot of suffering in my life. All that suffering that I endured on many levels. And the most thing you suffer about is loss of somebody. That's the main thing, in my opinion, because I'm not an expert about this. But, when you lose someone, you really, hurt. There's nothing you could do that can change it. It'll drive you bananas to a point where you don't believe in certain things anymore, and you don't know if this is true or that's true.
Start doubting God and all that stuff.
Well, yeah. There's a whole other, I have a whole other feeling now about that. But I know there's something after this. Even like when I was a kid, my mother went to the hospital when I was 6. She didn't come home. She died when I was 8. A week later, my father went to prison. That was the beginning of where everything went off tilt for me. When you're out the home structure anymore, going through that led me to look for love in all the wrong places, like I said before.
Well, I was going to say that's got to bring you to a different family then.
Most kids most kids on the street are looking to belong, and if they don't,
same thing with gangs like the Bloods and the Crips,
right?
If they don't, a lot of them don't come from a family structure,
right?
So they're looking for family in other places.
Exactly.
Right. You look for that belonging.
Yeah.
Looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah. And it was me and my sister, and then we went to some family members to stay, but that didn't work out too good. But that was the beginning of the path that I took. If you want to go far back for that, when I lost my mother, and then my father went to prison.
At 8, would you say 8 years old?
Yeah,
that's
she went to the hospital
tough.
when I was 6, and she stood there till I was 8 and died.
I mean, I lost my mom 11 years ago.
Oh, sorry.
And that's still tough to me. I mean, and I was, I was 40-something years old, and I lost her. Never mind at 8 years old. That had to be rough.
At 8 years old, you really don't have the mental capacity in order to deal with not being able to have your mother around.
Right.
It had to screw you up a little bit. And to be honest with you, if it didn't screw you up, I'd say there's something wrong with you.
It's something that always stuck in my head, like, why this happened?
It gives you a different outlook on things.
Yeah. Yeah, and then as you go through life more, you lose more people. The suffering and the loss up until now, like when I just lost my wife recently. And the same thing that happened to me is happening to my daughter. It's like history is repeating itself. The only difference is my daughter has structure.
Right.
she's not, getting put from house to house. She has, structure, and she has me.
Well, I see that. I see that on your posts on social media and stuff, that you're an involved father.
Yeah.
Because now your relationship with your father being away during your formative years, I'm sure that had a little bit of an impact on how you raise your own child.
Yeah. I want her to know that I'm always going to be there for her, and, she's okay. And never have to worry about things I used to worry about.
Not to mention you put your daughter in movies.
Yeah. Listen, I started since she's an infant. I had the camera on her face as an infant.
Got to get her used to the profile.
That was the whole point, to get her used to the whole thing, and she's doing good.
Well, there was that one scene in the movie, in a recent small movie that you had sent me a while ago, and it's you picking up a child from the street as if you were abducting her. Right. You have a mask on and everything.
Right.
And I see the way you pick this child up in back of my mind, and I didn't know that was your daughter. In the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's his daughter, because only a father picks up their own child that way.
What happened was the guy that I was scheduled to abduct her, he didn't have time to do it at the time that I had to do it. So I had to do 2 roles there. So I had to, mask up and hat up, and so you can't see it's me. But a lot of people said, I know that's you.
Had to play the dad and abductor.
Yeah. And, it worked out pretty good. But she's my everything. And again, everything that I've been through in my entire life, I wouldn't change it. Because if one thing was altered, I might not have her.
You're hired, by the way, to promote our show, because that's the concept of our show. You can't change anything. As much as it sucks while you're going through it, and it's brutal, you can't change it, because you'd never be here today.
No, I wouldn't change it.
There is something to be said about the love for a daughter. You could love your mother, you could love your father, but that fatherly love for a daughter. Yeah. I mean, my daughter used to look at me when she was a kid. She'd look at me, and I'd just melt.
Yeah, but I feel bad for both of you guys.
What do you need?
I feel really bad for both of you guys, because you guys got daughters. I got 2 sons. All right. When my oldest they used to give the sonograms, and they would guess, and they guessed a girl. I remember this wave of panic coming over me, going, holy shit, the first guy that looks at this girl, I'm going to shoot him in the back of the head.
Yeah, but see, I feel bad for you, because you don't have that. Like I said, Frank could attest to it. That love that you feel for that daughter.
That bond.
Listen, I always used to say, my daughter used to come up, when I used to come home, my daughter would come up and give me a hug. My son would come up and kick me in the shin. It's 2 different types of love.
I could see that.
But it's the same thing.
I could see that, because my son just changed my name on Netflix. You have the different things on Netflix. My new name on Netflix is Douchebagalo.
Oh.
That was really nice of him. That's what you get from a 12 going on 13 or 35-year-old.
But now if your daughter did it, it would just be daddy. With hearts.
We'll get into this a little bit more in depth, but you never going back to your former life. Does your daughter play heavily into that, or is there keeping you clean?
Before she was born, I was pretty much headed in a different direction.
Yeah.
Certain things went down, and I had to make choices, and it was hard. There were hard choices. But I had to do it strategically, like a chess game, like I never played in my life. And
except chess, when you make a wrong move, you don't die.
Yeah. To this day, things are working out good. The way the life went and where it was going, even when things were going good, it was bad. If you really think about it.
Let's get into that, because once you had this romantic version in your head of what this life was growing up,
the Hollywood version,
right?
Yeah.
And then once you hit the streets, what was the reality?
Yeah. Well, basically, you watch these movies, and now you think you're part of this big thing, this big romantic thing with what's full of love and honor, and you realize as you get more in deeper into it, that it's not everything that you thought it was.
Isn't it a life of like almost looking over your shoulder every day?
Oh, yeah, but you get used to that.
You get used to that.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how conditioned you were. You get used to that. I don't know whether I, in my current life or my current way of thinking, would ever get used to looking over my shoulder. Hey, is somebody going to put 2 behind my ear?
Well, see, when you're in this life and you're in serious situations and you see serious things, you become accustomed to living a certain way, as to where you're ready for everything, whether the antennas are always up. And normally you look normal while you're doing it, but it's just so natural that when you leave your house, you already know what's going on. When you're getting out of your car, when you're driving, like you become conditioned to look over your shoulder and to be followed by law enforcement.
Well, Mike and I understand that. So I don't know. I can't speak for Mike, but I'm pretty sure it's the same way. When we walk into a restaurant, within 2 seconds, and nobody will see us doing it, but within 2 seconds, I have that whole restaurant scanned.
You have to read the whole room.
The whole room.
Yeah.
I know this person's got his hand underneath here, and he doesn't look right, or he's sweating, or his body language is off. And it's hypervigilance, but it comes from experience, and it comes from getting your ass kicked a couple times. That's pretty much what it comes from.
Yeah, you become conditioned. And again, what I used to really love was being surveilled. I used to
Try to fuck with them every once
because
in
I
a while.
really would. Because you know what is there was this one group. I wish I could talk to these guys. They would try so hard for me not to see them and blend in.
I was gonna say, did you ever just drive by and wave to them?
It got to the point where I would knock on the window with my motorcycle.
Come on, fucko, let's go.
They went and got a Mustang and a Corvette just to keep up with me. I don't know how they did it, but they did it.
Was it FBI or was it NYPD?
I don't know, because it was during the Columbo War, and that's when they took every crew from all across the country to come investigate us.
Really?
So all the agent cars were all different plates from different states. So I don't know what agency they were from.
If you're really interested in finding out who was surveilling you, give us a couple weeks. Okay, we still got some friends in some low or high places. Maybe we can figure that out, because what a great thought for you to sit down with somebody.
Well, there was one like we're jumping around right now. That's all right?
Oh,
Yeah,
sure,
listen.
sure.
All right. There was
This is three guys sitting around bullshitting.
There
There happened to be mics in front of us.
All right. This was June 10th of 1992, give or take. We decided to have sausage and peppers for lunch. So we go to Brooklyn to Fajico's and get the sausage and peppers
Fajico's.
and the bread, okay? And then we go back to Staten Island, and we're in the backyard like a normal day, and now we see a bunch of agent cars. So I'm like, all right, there's that agent car, there's that. And so now we just pull in. We're not doing nothing wrong. But we have a trunk full of, bag full of guns. So
No leather jackets, though.
Yeah.
so the driver was like, we got to get rid of these guns because the agents are all around. So I was like, all right, pull over here. Now there was a spot near the Staten Island Mall. I take the bag of guns and I hide it into like a tree, like a small tree in this wooded area. And now we get back into the car and we go. Now we have no idea the car's bugged, and it's been bugged. So they got the conversations for the last month in this particular car. We go back to the house. We started the barbecue. He's frying the sausage. His wife is sauteing the onions upstairs. And we forgot some ingredient or something. So I said, all right, let me take my motorcycle and go get this thing. I forget what it was I had to go get. I went down the block. Now the agents start following me. So I know something's going on. I go, you know what? Let me get these guns and get rid of them. So I get the guns. Now I take them back to the house I was at to tell them I'm going to get rid of them. Because if anybody tries to chase me in one of the cars, they can't catch me. As soon as I pulled up to the house, his wife comes out, this guy Joe, and I go, listen, I got this bag. I'm going to get rid of it because there's agents everywhere. I go, I just passed by a spot of a parking lot, and I see them like getting out vests out of their trunks, and they're like gearing up for something. So maybe somebody around here is going to get busted or something. He goes, just give them to me. He takes them and he goes. As soon as he took them, that was it. They came out of everywhere.
The ninjas.
Yeah, they were the vans, the cars, everywhere on the block. I was like, I just took off down the block. Now when I get to the corner, I make my turn, and who's standing right there waiting for me? The Mustang and the Corvette.
Oh, man.
All right, so now these agents, they want to run me over. And now it starts a chase through Staten Island. They're chasing me down Richmond Avenue, and I'm flying. And I make it to the Korean Expressway, going towards Jersey. They were going so fast behind me, too. I believe one of them might have crashed because I seen something in my mirror. It looked like a crash. I'm not sure. So now I get on the Korean Parkway, and I'm flying. And I had a race bike. I had a Jigsaw 1100.
Little crotch rockets, we used to call them back in the day.
Yeah, and it was all worked on because I needed something so fast to pull me around. I was big, I remember I was going down through the Korean. There was a helicopter. also low, turned around facing me. So now by the time I get to the bridge, there was a barricade of the bridge police. I went through it. The only thing that kept up with me was the helicopter. And that thing followed me all the way to the Woodbridge Mall.
No kidding.
Okay? And I stopped right in the front of the Woodbridge Mall. And as I walked through the mall, walked into stores. I walked into a clothing store that was right there. And I was like Jason Bourne. I was taking shirts off, changing them. By the time I got to the other side of the mall, I jumped in a cab. I'm giving you the fast version of it. It was really a wild version.
But they obviously knew who you were.
Oh, they were trying to run me over.
Yeah.
They knew exactly who I was. And but I knew, because they didn't like that I had the motorcycle. So they got 2 cars to try to keep up with me. And for weeks, they will follow me with those 2 cars. And then,
so tell me the feeling of what it's like. You're sitting, say you get locked up, and they come in and they say, we had your car bugged. We got all the conversations for the last month. Internally, whatever you say externally, that's besides. Internally, what's going on inside your heart? Is it just like a sinking feeling?
Well, you feel sinking and you feel sick to your stomach.
Like an I'm fucked feeling.
Besides that, you feel betrayed. Because somebody had to bug the car that or give it to them.
You know what?
Yeah.
Because you see movies where the agents break into the cars and do it.
Well, the funny thing is, there was one door in this guy's car that never opened. It was like always stuck or something. One of the guys borrowed it to go to a funeral. And when he came back, I went to the door. Boom, it opens right up. We go, he must have had a bug with the agents. Meanwhile, he did.
You've seen some brutal stuff. And I know you've seen some brutal stuff because you were involved with probably one of the most prolific hitmen, gangster, whatever you want to call him, and that's Greg Scarpa, who was playing both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy things. I've seen a lot of crazy things, especially during the war. But
and we're talking about the Columbo War of the early 90s, yes.
Well, there was a lot of shootings, a lot of deaths. That doesn't really affect me much because everybody knew what they were signed up for.
I was going to say, it's part of the trade.
Yeah. And again, see, like me, even during that time, any given time we could have been killed. And you accept that. So that really, that whole situation really doesn't affect me. Like there's other situations that I think of more, at this stage of my life. Like recently, I was driving with my daughter and the car in front of me gets hit head on. And the guy that was in front of me, he ends up popping out of his back window. The other car gets sent across the road. So I'm the first one on the scene. I get out. The guy, I think he's dead because the way he was laying. That kind of I see the big hole in his head. And I'm like, okay, this guy's probably dead. Let me go see the other person. Now I see the other person. It's a woman who's on the brink of death. And now all I'm thinking is a kid. But everything in the car, you can't see. The seats are out. It was a really impact. So now I'm looking around saying, I'm going to find a kid. So I'm looking around, and there's no kid. And now I'm trying to get this lady. I'm trying to save this lady. This is my duty now. I'm on the scene now because I got to save this lady. I couldn't get her out of the car. The impact made the doors jam. And it was rain. It was all rain. It was a storm going. And people were going by. And all I heard was the tires crunkling over the debris. And no one was helping.
That sickens me when I see that.
And I'm like,
or people just taking videos of it with their cell phone.
And no one's helping. No one's helped me try to rip the thing. I'm trying to break the window, but now the window that her head went through is open, but she's so mangulated. I'm afraid to pull her out of the window. I'm trying to get the door open to try to. I don't want anything to fall apart.
Right.
It felt like forever, but it took about 8 minutes for the cops to come. Now they're trying to get the window open to try to get the door out. But by this time, I already seen the lady stop breathing already. She died right there on the scene. The other guy, who I thought was dead, also, he got up like a zombie. All right. And
it was helping you try to open the door.
Okay. And he lived. He ended up living because the ambulance was there by the time he just sprung up. I guess the adrenaline kicked in. Like at all the brutal things I seen, all that affected me the most, that I couldn't help this lady.
That's a funny thing because Mike and I saw that when we were working all the time. You've been in rooms where violence has happened up close and personal. Mike and I have seen those car accidents all the time. the way, from my perspective, not being in your life, but being in a police role, those things never bothered me because I had to go on to the next call. I had to do the next thing. Where the violence that you saw in your old life, you've said, well, you know what? We know what we signed up for. You just move on and it doesn't affect you. It's bizarre how things that we used to see normally every day affect you versus what you had seen would certainly affect us.
But like this accident was something that was out of your control.
No,
It wasn't part of your life,
No.
And everything that you saw back in the day in your lifestyle, you almost had control over that. This accident was something that was out of your control. And, it almost gives you that helpless feeling.
It does, and I think about that woman. She was so young. She had a family, and I was there, but I just couldn't do nothing. Like, I wish things could have changed a little bit, and then you go through life and you have a lot of loss. You really can't control death.
That's what life is. Life is loss and how to deal with it.
And that's the thing too. I'm sure there are points you put your mother's face on that lady, or you put your daughter's face on that lady, and that now it becomes personal.
On pediatric patients, whenever we lost pediatric patients, thankfully the two that I lost, I didn't have children. I know guys, they put their children's faces on the child that was lost, however they died. And I know it's very tough. But there was an eventual time where you went away. You were going to prison.
Yep.
All right. So when you initially find out you're going to prison, give me a little insight onto what that's like.
Now you're going to prison. It doesn't get any more real than that in as far as your life. Okay, here, you're going away. You don't know how long you're going to go away for. You're fighting, and you don't know. You just, you have hope that something's going to happen. And sometimes things do happen, sometimes things don't. But now once you realize that, okay, you played, now you got to pay. Now it's time to pay. Then you realize and reflect and say, okay, was this worth it?
You know what? I've never heard anybody say that. I've never heard, was all this worth it?
Was it worth it?
But now you can't take it back.
You can't take it back. And now you realize.
There's no I'm sorry's in this game anymore.
No, you realize the mistakes you made. And it all comes down to a choice. The choices I've made led me to where I was, in the cage. Now you have to go through that. And you have nothing you can do with the outside world. If you try to do both, if you try to stay in prison and still have contact with people outside, as far as being in their lives, this and that, it'll drive you crazy.
I've heard it put this way, that if you're doing a long prison sentence, forget about your wife because she'll leave you.
Yes.
Forget about the relationship with your children because that's going to be, hopefully you'll be able to reconnect later one day. And anybody you ever loved, there's a very good chance that you'll never see them again or be separated from when you get out.
Right. So they die.
Just forget about it. That's the way it was told to me, as a way to make prison palatable.
Well, growing up, all the prisons that I've been in, I was also a visitor, visiting my father there.
Wow.
Growing up. So I seen the visiting room before. I seen both sides now. Luckily, I wasn't married. I was young. So that was a good thing. I didn't have any kids. That was a good thing.
That was a really good thing.
I was going to say, that's going to be tough. I mean, you went to see your father in prison. Was that maybe one of the reasons that you kind of changed because you didn't want your daughter to come visit you in prison?
Well, no, I changed before that.
Well, what sparked that change?
There was some stuff that went down. I had to make some choices.
Yeah.
And
internally, though, was there just time for you to leave? I'm done.
It really, I tell you, I was starting to get disgusted. Like a couple of years before I really left of just how things were turning out. Nothing was going the way you thought it was supposed to, even after you realize it's not what it was.
But is that getting back to what Kevin was saying before, the change in the people that are involved in it that really frustrated you?
It's the change in the people, and the people who are in power, they're trying, they're making calls. They're trying to deal with the way time is being given out. They're trying to deal with the way everything's on video now. You can't do things the way you used to. So they're making calls. Things that are supposed to happen don't, because they're too busy trying to figure out how to run this undetected again. By now it's you figure it's 2010, 2008. Undetected is never going to happen again. It's too known in neighborhoods. It's too known on movies. It's too known on television. Like, if you were to ask a kid in 1970, is this guy straightened out, which is a made member of a family, they'd be like, I don't know. If you were to ask a kid in 2010, is this guy Joey straightened out? Oh, yeah, of course he is. So right then and there, you know there's something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the rule that I had always heard was if two guys who were made talk to each other, unless they knew each other, they'll never tell each other they were straightened out.
No.
Yeah, but now I guess
now everybody says everything.
That's crazy.
What they'll do is they'll go to a place. They'll be like, without directly coming out to say it. So say like me and you know each other. Okay, you got straightened out, so I know you're a good fella. Now I just get straightened out. Say, okay, now I'm a good fella. I'm a made person in the family. Here's how they'll tip you. Oh, you see this guy Mike? Yeah, he's with us.
Yeah, that's it.
And now
Lingo.
Or they'll say, see this guy Mike? Yeah, he's a friend of ours too. Right then and there,
Yeah,
you know you're straightened out. That's the little thing there.
That's the lefty thing, friend of mine, friend of ours, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking
about.
I know.
I used to see it all the time, like I said, at my father's club. They'd say, this guy, he's one of us. Leave him alone. Because, like I said, I was a bouncer there, and we used to throw people out all the time. Yeah. No, leave him alone. He's one of us.
Once they say it's a friend of ours,
yeah,
that means you're straightened out.
I know this because I'm a Freemason, so I know certain things about people's behavior, what other Freemasons are. We'll never call each other out. Or you'll just go up and say, "Hey, what lodge are you in?" That because you can see, you identify certain things. You've been around it for so long that you understand. So that I definitely understand. But you got out of prison and decided to. It's not even like you were a car thief and now you're going to be a car salesman. You're not even in the same realm anymore. You decided to go so far away from what you knew. That had to be a scary experience.
Well, when you come home from prison, you think there's going to be like some parade. Yeah. You're going to have a suitcase of money. There's nothing.
Frankie Steele's back. Here we go. Yeah,
wait a minute. I saw a suitcase of money.
Yeah. The good old days. But you realize things change, and now you're playing catch up. Now, when I went away.
And now you're a marked man also. You get that stigma.
Well, you're marked by the government.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's it. Once they have your number, you're through the system, they will never let you go. There's always going to be something they're going to throw you on. Some case here or there, and see if it sticks, see if it doesn't, and then
you forgot to get a permit to film in New Jersey.
We've seen, Kevin and I have seen that in law enforcement. Someone goes away for doing residential burglary or something. Now the kid gets out and there's a burglar in their area.
First person they look at.
Yeah, because of my past and everything I went through with the war, it followed me after I got out. Like there was January 11th. 2011 Mafia Takedown Day when 127 guys got rounded up at 6 a.m.
Wow.
This was like a historic day in mob history. There was the most mob guys arrested at once.
That's like a racketeering thing?
Well, basically they had indictments for every family, basically. Yeah. I got arrested that morning.
Is that with the Yorkie?
Yes.
I read that one.
You haven't lived until you woke up to a no-knock warrant from SWAT.
Yeah, when your door comes off and flashbangs go off.
Yeah, I hear everything. So I heard the creak of my front gate. So now, who's coming here? It's 6 o'clock in the morning. It just turned 6 o'clock. I look, it's 6 o'clock. So I go, let me get up and look. So I go to one of my bedrooms that was my dog's room, because he had his own room. And I go in there, and I look out the window, and I see on the steps, they're holding on their shoulders like a SWAT team.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a SWAT team from prison. And they're looking like Darth Vader all the way down the steps. This became a joke in my house this morning because I just started going out with my wife a little before. You remember when Jerry Maguire, she goes, "You had me at hello?"
Yeah.
All right. So after this all happens, my wife was playing a joke on me. "You had me at SWAT." Now she just only a few months with me now. She's moved in and everything. And it was my birthday the day before. So I was like, I had a couple of drinks. I come running back in the room. I go, "Get up, SWAT's here." So now I'm getting money and I'm putting it in her pocketbooks. Right? So I'm filling up her pocketbook with money. And now I hear the door, boom, boom. So I'm like, "Get dressed." So now I'm trying to get dressed because the last thing I want to do is end up on the gangland news in my underwear.
My skivvies.
Yeah. So now I'm throwing pants on, and they're still going boom, boom. They're knocking the door. Now my dogs are going crazy. I have an American Bulldog and a small dog, a little Maltese. And the dog gets, comes slamming open, comes crashing open. And they just dropped 2 grenades in my house. So now I go to kick one because the little puppy thought it was a toy.
Oh.
So he was running to it. So I go kick that one. So that one blows up in the corner of my living room. And the other one, it went under my table. So it really didn't hurt the dog. And then they came in and they had, all the red dots on me. Screaming, "Move, I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to shoot the dog." I go, "You're not going to shoot the dog." I said, "Somebody's going to die today if we shoot the dog."
Shoot me, not the dog.
So the dogs get put in the bathroom. They take me out. I have no idea why I'm being arrested now. I'm thinking of a million things that are going through my head.
Is this that parking ticket I got last week?
So I'm thinking of a million things. I'm like, they never came like this for me. Ever. Even though on the war. When I finally did get arrested, they didn't come like this. Now I get downstairs, my whole block is lit up. They got a tank outside my house. It's like a SWAT tank.
What did they think you did?
Wait till you hear. So now, this is all stuff from the war. In the end, this is where I figure it out.
20 years later?
Almost 20 years later. So now I go out, there's like a tank out there. There's all kinds of SVU trucks, and all my neighbors are out to look at the windows, looking at what's going on by the door. And I'm in the van. They lock up my future wife. She was my wife at that, my girl. They bring her outside. And now I'm standing there in the truck, and I don't know why I'm being arrested. It's like a computer going off in my head, all different things. And I'm like, this is bad. That's all I can say. This is bad.
The one you don't see coming.
Yeah.
Something ain't right here.
Yeah. I go, this is bad. So now, after about a half hour, I'm in the van. Agents come up now, field agents. They have the FBI jackets on. They go, "You know why you're being arrested?" I'm like, "No."
It's a good question.
And he pulls from behind. He goes, "You see this?" And it was Nintendo Wii. Okay. I'm like, "The video game?" He goes, "Yeah." I says, "What am I being arrested for?" He goes, "You bought stolen property." I was relieved.
That's a minor thing.
I go, "You're telling me you did all this, knock my door down, threw grenades at me, have SWAT here for stolen property?" They go, "Yeah, and we just went to your bar and took all your TVs down." I'm like, "Well, you better take the cartridge out of that Wii because my favorite cartridge is in there. So go in there and plug it in and get it out." So now I have no idea that there's another 126 mob guys getting arrested at the same time.
For the same thing?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, all different things. So now I get taken in a van. They bring me to the Army base by Fort Hamilton, by the Verrazano Bridge.
Right before Hamilton, yeah.
So now they bring me into a gym, and now I start seeing everybody. All my friends are here.
It's like a family reunion.
So I'm looking at everybody. I'm like, okay, something's going on. I'm just happy and smiling that it's stolen property. What happened was a few months before, I was opening a bar, and I needed to get some TVs. So a guy I knew said, "Listen, don't worry. I got the TVs. Don't worry. Whatever you need, I got." So I ended up getting the call, and he goes, "Come to Jersey to get it." So they made me go from Staten Island to Jersey for interstate commerce.
Yeah.
And when I get to the spot with the warehouse with all the stuff, I only want the TVs for the bar. He goes, "This other stuff, do you want this taken? Pay me when you get it." So I said, "All right." So I took everything in a van with a guy I sent the kid to go. I didn't know that the FBI went and bought the stuff and then sold it to me. The FBI went and bought the stuff and sold it to me.
It's almost like entrapment.
It's a little bit entrapment.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. And so now I'm at the military base. And I'm like, what the hell happened? I don't know. This guy went bad. That guy went bad. So everybody is is getting processed. Now we get put on these Greyhounds to go to the courthouse. So now I'm on the Greyhound, and I'm seeing a couple of guys from the Gambinos, Lucchese's, Bananos, and everything. I'm like, "What are you here for?" "Oh, yeah, racketeering." "What are you here for?" "A body from like 20 years ago." "What are you here for?" "Oh, for this shooting." I go, did anybody get swatted this morning on this bus? Anybody wake up to grenades? They were like, no, they called me to come outside. I says, are you kidding me?
You got arrested for a shooting. You got arrested for this.
Yeah, murder.
And I got
I think I had a body.
and I got stolen merchandise, and you're
Well,
fucking
I
swatting
says-
me.
Wait, hold on a second. You had a stolen Wii,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah. I go, so you're telling me you all got arrested and nobody had SWAT set me on this bus? And they were like, yeah.
Well, and that's what I was getting to before. Is that your past following you?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
But you know, I like the way you've gone now as far as getting into the film industry.
Yeah.
Because I think you're doing some cool stuff.
Oh, listen, again, everything that I've been through in my life, all the suffering, all the heartache, all the pain, being used in this life and then realizing it's nothing what you think it's going to be. And you give yourself to the mob and then you realize it'll spit you out in the end. You know, you go in whole like a whole fish, like Heathcliff eats the whole fish, and when they spit you out, it's a skeleton.
Unfortunately, your new industry, which is media and entertainment,
It's the same way.
but
but
they're going to use you until they can't use you anymore.
You know, and I see that with certain contracts and stuff now, and how they want to, like, you know, have a slave contract, they call it. I see that with certain things, but I've seen it before also. Everything that I've been through, it's making me who I am today. That's why I wouldn't change anything. If I would have changed something, there's a lesson I wasn't supposed to learn.
Like I said, and like Kevin said, that's the premise of our show.
Yeah.
You know, what you went through, and we had this conversation before we even started today.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about going through that suffering and coming through that suffering and making yourself the person you are today.
Yeah.
and learning about it. Now, the stuff that
Well, you could make a lot of mistakes in your life. If you don't learn from those mistakes, then shame on you.
Listen, you need to make mistakes because mistakes you learn from.
I've learned way more from my mistakes, my victories.
Me
than my
too.
victories.
That's why Kevin's so fucking smart.
And I made some serious mistakes in my life. Like, I shouldn't be here. You know, mistakes. You know,
Yeah.
And then when you're growing up, you're like, we're never making it to 25 anyway.
I always wanted 27 because it seemed like all the great musicians that I admired die when they're 27.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin.
Jim Morrison.
I used to say 25. And then when I hit 50, I was like, oh my God.
Well, no. So you said 25. What was it like on your 25th birthday? Like, yeah, I'm not quite ready to go yet.
Well, you know what it was? I was in prison. Yeah, I was in prison for that. I was in Lewisburg for the 25th birthday. And then when I hit 50, I was like, this is not even supposed to happen. You know, let alone happen. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be in my cage still rotting away.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm 56. I'm like, how the fuck did I make it here?
Yeah, listen, I don't even know. I don't have a clue. I just need 25 more. If I could sign for 25 more years now, I'd sign right now.
As long as they're 25 good years.
Good productive.
I don't
years.
want to. We talk about this all the time in law enforcement, where we go to these medical calls and the people are in bad shape, and every officer will walk out inevitably, turn to their partner, and say, "Don't ever let me get that way. Take me for a walk." Actually, that was what was said. Yeah. Take me for a walk. How did you use your past life in what you do now? Because, like I said, you left a life that is very backstabbing to go into a new life, which, from what I know about it, is very backstabbing. But how do you use your acumen that you learned on the streets to now?
Well, the only good thing is, you know, when you're in that life and you're swimming with the big sharks, you kind of learn how to navigate. Now I'm going into the entertainment field. I could swim with the big sharks. I could do stuff that I'm not supposed to even know how to do, but because of everything that I've been through, I do it well. Self-taught.
Street smarts,
and even self-taught with the computer and editing and doing stuff. I could do stuff just as good as someone who went to film school. The only good thing here is no one's gonna die.
Nobody dies over a film.
You know what I mean? No one's gonna die
For real, anyway. I've seen, and the fake blood coming out and stuff, but.
You know, I mean, as far as no one's going to die, as far as dealing with the hierarchy in the film industry, in the media industry.
That's a good point.
You know,
that's a good point. But one of the things you have is because of brutality that you've seen and getting that reaction of seeing that brutality, you now have a media outlet where you can give others a similar feeling without having to go through all the bad stuff.
Right.
You know, you can make them feel what you were feeling while you were in there. And that's where your perspective comes in. And that's why I say it's important that you went through all that stuff.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it everything that I've been through in my life, it even up to the point where my wife got sick. If she was with anybody else, she would have died a lot sooner. They would have fell apart. They wouldn't know what to do. I was made for serious situations. Like, it's in me. I navigate well around serious things. When she got sick, we knew it was bad. Again, you have hope. It was like we gave her a prison sentence, but she has hope that she's going to live. I knew it was not going to happen. Once we got told out of 26 million people in the DNA database for a bone marrow match was 0.
Oh,
Yeah.
cow.
There's no hope there. But all you can do
But you got to
now-
stay positive.
Yes, and that's all about suffering. All the suffering that I've been through, you learn how to deal with things a certain way. So now, when you know that there's no hope, you give them that compassion they need to get through this. And I don't want to say I let her think that's it's going to be okay. She knew in the end it wasn't going to be okay. But I've been going through so much stuff my whole life that I needed to be with her to do this.
You need somebody. Everybody needs their rock in
Yeah.
order to break themselves up against every
Yeah.
You know, and like you said, that probably gave her more time.
It did.
You know,
it definitely did. The way I handled everything, the way I took her out of different hospitals and brought her to where she needed to be. If this was left in her family's hands,
Yeah.
she would have been dead quick. You know, at least she had a couple extra years to make memories, to make videos. And again, 2 weeks before she died, they told her, "You're dying in 14 days, 2 weeks. Do you want to die in a hospital or do you want to die at home?" She goes, "I want to die home." Because the plan was to have her die home and have her trapped in the house. This way she could be around us, you know.
Yeah.
It didn't work out like that because every single day of the 14 days, we had to go have platelets and a blood transfusion in order to give her some extra time. And on one of those days, towards the end, she had a positive COVID test.
Oh no!
Wow.
So now they're like, "You can't go home." So she was dead by the next day.
You know, at this point in this show, we usually ask everybody what they've learned from their suffering, but I think
we've learned.
I think you have just put it very clearly that, you know, there are certain people that are just made for serious situations.
Yeah.
And
Some people
Some
work
people
well
like you.
under pressure.
yeah, and
You
I
know,
think
and
Frankie's one of those people.
My whole life, I was always the underdog. So the pressure was since the beginning. It just evolved and evolved and evolved. The more insane the situation, the better off I am. My brain works way better.
If it's too calm, you can't make the right decision.
Yeah, you're stammering it.
Yeah. It's like not normal.
Yeah.
You know, I needed to have total chaos. And even in prison, they used to pull me out. Like when I was in the hole, I had to go to the hole for like 3 years. While you're in the hole for that long, you have to get pulled out, get tested by the psychologist. And the psychologist looked like he was exactly clone of the guy that died from Totally Funny Videos. What was it?
Oh, Bob Saget?
Bob Saget, yes.
Yeah.
He was like the clone. After a while, you became friendly with him. And he would do that Rorschach test with me.
Oh, God. That's,
Please.
Yeah.
I had one.
Yeah.
So, you know, everything came to, it was a chicken wing. All right. Everything I saw was a chicken wing. And he would just laugh. And he would just like, at the end, he goes, "You know, you're not completely insane, but what I get from you is that you need total chaos to work your best." That was his exact words, to be your best.
You need bullets flying at your head constantly in order to
It keeps
meet your
me on
potential.
point.
Well, Frankie, thank you so much for coming in today. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about where we can find you? I know you're doing Mobsters versus Monsters.
Yes, it's going to be a good show. It's a paranormal show, and it's 4 mob guys, and it's going to be very interesting, comical too because we're just funny together, but more serious. Everything that I've been through in my life, it's prepared me for something like this because it's a reality show. You're in my life, watching us do what we do, and it's going to be good.
See, and that's funny too, because you said, you know, we have a lot of fun and we have a lot of laughs. Isn't that really what it's all about now?
Listen,
You know, if you can't laugh at yourself and laugh at each other, and I mean, and that's why me and Kevin do it. You know, we throw in the jokes every once in a while. You take that.
Well,
If you're not laughing, you're dying.
You got to disarm the, the
listen,
sadness.
at this point in life now that I made it this far, I really want to make it at least 25 more years more. I really, really do. I need to get healthy for that, and I'm trying to do that. And it's been working because I used to be big. I went small, big, small. You know, now after what I seen with my wife, how out of nowhere she just got leukemia. that the one that she got, only 200,000 people on Earth get a year.
Wow.
And just no symptoms, no warning sign, just boom, it makes you really open up your eyes. And at this stage of the game, really, what do you need in life to be happy? To be around the people you love, do good, positive things to help others, and not monetarily. Sometimes it's just talking to somebody. Being kind goes a long way. It really does.
I like that a lot.
It goes a long way. And,
a handshake and a hug go a long way with some people.
Yeah. And just being kind to them, And that's what I try to do. I try to live my life in a way now where I'm kind to others. I look out for others. And I always had that in me. I always would help people. Now at this stage, I just want to live a good life, enjoy my daughter, enjoy whatever the show brings me, whether it's people like it or they don't like it. I hope it gets a nice run.
You know what? But fuck it if they don't like it.
I know.
As long as it's making you happy.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. That's where, like I said, we're all, well, Kevin's a little younger, but we're all in our 50s now.
Yeah.
You got to do something that you enjoy now.
No, and I enjoy it.
That brings you satisfaction.
No, I enjoy it. And you got to remember now, when you make media, when you make film, when you make a TV show, when you're gone, somewhere down the line, somebody's going to watch this.
Yeah.
Like a legacy type of thing.
Like you're saying, Bob Saget.
Yeah.
Bob Saget. People are still watching.
Someone's going to watch it.
We were talking about before when singers die, your favorite musicians, their album sales go through the roof. Because people are still trying to grasp, keep hold of that person.
So basically, the Mobsters vs. Monsters reality paranormal show, that's going to be it's going to be good. So look out for that, everybody. And then I got a couple of them little small movies, Mob Block, and a couple of the series that are coming out that I'm doing myself. And I just want to, enjoy the rest of my life, basically, and make
the next 25 years plus.
Make some movies, and leave a mark.
Now,
everything in life vanishes except karma.
That's a good one to leave right there. Frankie, thank you so much for stopping by and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. Well, we have to finish another time because there's a lot more.
There's a lot more because number one, and I'm just going to leave a little teaser out there. You got some freaking hilarious prison stories. That's number one. The stuff that had me crying. You were in Out for Justice with Steven Seagal. Yeah. Okay. Which I got to hear all about because it's got to be the worst Brooklyn accent I ever heard in my life. But there's a lot more.
There's a lot of good stories about that time.
There's a lot of stuff that we need to talk about. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned today. Don't buy leather jackets from Istanbul.
Oh, that's soft leather. It's like camel ass.
Camel ass.
I was going to say camel toe.
Don't look for love in the wrong places. Some people are made for serious situations, but most importantly, it all comes down to a choice. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of a Mafia Enforcer. Follow Mike on Instagram at dented_ace. I'm at Real Kevin Donaldson. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and now on YouTube. And we will see you on the next episode of The Suffering Podcast.